Welcome, dear listeners, to another journey into the timeless world of myth and legend. Tonight, we travel high above the clouds to the realm of the ancient gods, where destiny shaped the order of the universe. This is the story of time's the Throne of Olympus. Zeus becomes king of the gods asterisk. Long before the shining palaces of Olympus were built, the world was vast, mysterious, and unsettled. The heavens, the earth, and the seas were ruled by powers older than memory, and harmony was still a dream waiting to be fulfilled. In this age, the gods we know today were only beginning to find their voices, their purpose, and their place in the cosmos. Among them was one figure whose path would lead him from the shadows of uncertainty to the heights of everlasting glory. His name was Zeus, a child of promise and a bearer of hope for a new order. Guided by courage, wisdom, and an unshakable sense of destiny, Zeus would rise to bring balance where there had been disorder. He would bring light where there had been uncertainty and harmony where there had been chaos. So, settle in, open your imagination, and let us begin this tale of how Zeus became the king of the gods. Before the name of Zeus was spoken, before Mount Olympus shone in the heavens, there was a world both wondrous and unsettled. Imagine existence stretching endlessly, with no clear order, only raw power flowing like a river without banks. This was the age of the Titans, ancient beings born from the very fabric of creation itself. The Titans were immense in presence, not only in size, but in the weight of their authority. They embodied the primal forces of nature, sky, earth, sea, and time. Their rule was strong and enduring, yet harmony was missing. Each Titan held a piece of eternity, but none could weave the pieces into balance. Under their watch, the world lived, but it did not truly thrive. Among them stood Cronus, the Titan of time, the endless flow carrying all things forward. Cronus was powerful and wise, yet his reign was shadowed by fear. He longed to hold on to what he had claimed, fearing whispers of a future beyond his control. His throne was one of majesty, but also of unease. Above, the stars gleamed cold and distant, shining without warmth. Below, the seas surged with restless energy, untamed and unpredictable. The earth stretched vast and wild, filled with mountains, forests, and valleys without end. Yet within all this grandeur, something was missing. It was as though creation was waiting for a thread to weave the universe into harmony. The gods we know today, the Olympians, were not yet rulers. They were seeds of potential, hidden, waiting for their time. The world they would inherit was still held by the older powers. The Titans shaped the foundation but had not built a home where life could flourish freely. Still, there was beauty in this age, wild landscapes, glimmering stars, and oceans like mirrors of the heavens. But beauty without balance cannot last. Rivers did not flow in harmony with the land. The seasons had no steady rhythm, and the voice of justice was silent. The world was magnificent, yet incomplete. This was the Age of Titans, a great chapter of beginnings. It was a time of strength without direction, of time without a story. And within that age, destiny began to stir. The currents of fate moved quietly, like a soft wind before the storm. There was a sense that change was coming. Cronus could feel it despite his power. The Titans, for all their might, could not silence it. The world itself seemed to anticipate a new era, an era where wisdom would temper strength, where justice would guide authority, where harmony would unite the many forces of creation. The stage was set, though the leader had not yet risen. The cosmos waited for one who could bring the scattered pieces into a whole, a figure who would not only rule, but guide, not only command, but inspire. His name had not yet been spoken in reverence, but his time was drawing near. The winds of destiny carried his promise, a whisper growing louder with each moment of the Titan reign. This was the world before Zeus, powerful, magnificent, yet incomplete. A world yearning for balance, preparing for the arrival of a god who would one day sit upon the throne of Olympus. The world was restless under the reign of the Titans, and the winds of fate whispered of change. Among the whispers, one story began to take shape, the story of a child who would rise above the uncertainty of his age. This child was Zeus, and his birth was more than a moment in time. It was a promise, a spark of hope that would one day illuminate all of creation. The tale begins with Cronus, the Titan of time, who ruled with power but also with fear. Cronus was haunted by a prophecy that foretold a child of his blood would one day surpass him. The prophecy lingered in his mind like a shadow he could never escape. Though he ruled with eternity itself, Cronus knew time is never truly owned, it is only borrowed. From this prophecy, the story of Zeus began to take root. When he came into being, his presence carried something different from the other children of Cronus. He was not only a god in form, but a symbol of renewal, carrying the possibility of change. Unlike the Titans, Zeus represented something new, a blend of strength with wisdom and purpose. To protect him, his mother Rhea turned to the quiet places of the earth. She felt the weight of his destiny and knew he must be hidden from Cronus's fearful gaze. Some say she carried him to a cave on the island of Crete. There, the rocks, the trees, and the flowing springs became his guardians. Legends tell that divine spirits watched over him in his secret home. Nymphs fed him the milk of a sacred goat and honey from wild mountain hives. Outside the cave, dances and drums echoed to hide his cries from those who might discover him. Every detail of his early life speaks of protection and the world conspiring to preserve him. While hidden, Zeus grew not only in strength but also in spirit. His childhood was filled with learning as he observed the rhythms of the world around him. He watched the rivers flow, the day turn to night, and the stars dance in the sky. From these, he began to understand balance and harmony. He learned that true power lies not only in force, but also in patience and timing. Even as a child, there was a spark of leadership in him. Those who cared for him spoke of his brightness, his laughter, and his confident gaze. His eyes seemed to see farther than others, as though he carried a vision of the future. Destiny clung to him like sunlight to the morning sky. Zeus's growth was not only survival, it was preparation. The hidden cave became more than a shelter. It became a place of strength and readiness. While the world above was uneasy under Cronus's reign, a new force was quietly rising below. The earth itself seemed to rejoice at Zeus's birth. The mountains stood taller, the seas sang more clearly, and the winds whispered his name. Nature recognized him as the one who would bring harmony to the cosmos. For Cronus ruled with might, but he lacked vision and clung to fear. Zeus carried something greater, the courage to guide, the wisdom to balance, and the promise of justice. The story of his birth is more than a myth. It is the dawn of transformation. It is the moment when hope entered a world bound by fear. Hidden away, nourished by love, and guarded by destiny, Zeus grew in silence. He would one day step out of the shadows to claim his place in history. The future king of Olympus began not with thunder, but as a child of promise, protected and destined to change the world forever. As Zeus grew, hidden from the eyes of Cronus, he was no longer a child of secrecy, but a young god standing at the edge of destiny. His years of shelter had given him strength of body and clarity of spirit. He watched the rising sun, the setting moon, the endless stars, and he understood what the Titans had long ignored. Order is as powerful as chaos, and harmony is as enduring as strength. The cave that once sheltered him became a place of learning and reflection. He absorbed the lessons of nature, the unspoken truths carried by rivers, winds, and mountains. He saw time flow in rhythm, day yielding to night, and night opening into dawn. He came to believe that leadership required balance, not fear. True power meant guiding, nurturing, and uniting, not clinging to control. And so, the whispers of destiny grew louder inside him. They did not come as words, but as a quiet fire telling him he was meant for more. He was not made to hide forever, but to step into the world and claim his role. Still, he wondered if he was ready to face the Titans. They were vast and ancient, rooted deeply in the old ways of power. How could one young god stand against them? Yet whenever doubt came, he remembered the prophecy and his mother's protection. He remembered the nymphs who nourished him and the secret songs of nature. If the world had chosen to protect him, then perhaps it was preparing him. As he matured, Zeus's presence began to change. His laughter carried confidence, and his gaze held wisdom beyond his years. Those around him felt drawn to his light, as if leadership lived in his spirit. Legends say he sometimes walked among shepherds of Crete, hidden in mortal form. He listened to their stories, watched their struggles, and learned endurance from them. From nature, he had learned balance. From mortals, he now learned compassion. These lessons shaped the god he was destined to become. But destiny is not only about learning, it is about answering the call. And the call came as the weight of the Titans' rule pressed heavier on the world. The earth trembled under Cronus' grip, and the seas surged without rest. The skies themselves carried unease, as if awaiting a storm. Zeus felt the imbalance, as surely as one feels thunder before it breaks. One night, the stars burned bright, and Zeus looked upward with certainty. His destiny was not to remain hidden, nor live only as a child of prophecy. He was meant to bring order where there was chaos, and justice where there was fear. He was meant to bring unity where there was division. From that night on, he carried himself differently. He was no longer the hidden son of Rhea, but the chosen one of destiny. The voice of fate was no longer a whisper, it rang clear in his heart. The Titans still reigned, and Cronus still held his throne. But beneath the surface, change had already begun. A young god had heard the call of destiny, and he was ready to answer. The world was preparing for the dawn of a new era. And Zeus, with courage in his heart and wisdom in his spirit, was preparing to rise. This was the call of destiny, the moment Zeus knew his life was no longer his alone. It belonged to the cosmos, to Olympus, and to all who waited for balance to return. The call of destiny had awakened in Zeus, but even he knew no great change is ever achieved alone. The Titans were mighty, their rule deeply rooted in the fabric of the world. To face them, Zeus needed more than courage, he needed allies. He sought companions who shared his vision of balance and justice. The first to hear his call were his siblings, hidden away like him. They had suffered in silence, waiting for a chance to rise. Zeus found them one by one with patience and care. He spoke not of revenge, but of renewal and hope. He told them the world was not meant to live under fear. He promised a brighter, freer, and more just future. His words carried conviction, and his siblings began to believe. Hestia, gentle and wise, saw in Zeus a protector of family and hearth. Demeter, bound to the earth, knew life would flourish under harmony. She pledged loyalty, hoping the land would thrive again. Hera, proud and strong, saw the makings of a true ruler in her brother. In that moment, she stood by his side with resolve. Hades, keeper of shadows, thoughtful and deep, offered his sharp mind. He longed for a world where justice outweighed tyranny. Poseidon, fierce as the sea, thundered his loyalty with unshakable strength. Together, they formed not only family, but a circle of power. Each brought gifts the others lacked: fire, earth, shadow, sea, and hearth. United under Zeus's vision, they became more than themselves. Still, allies were not enough. The Titan's power was immense. Zeus sought wisdom in mountains, caves, and winds of the earth. He learned patience, strategy, and the art of timing. Victory would not come through strength alone, but through unity and cleverness. The nymphs who once nurtured Zeus taught him secret arts. From them, he learned to call upon the forces of storm and sky. Thunder became his voice, lightning his weapon, gifts of renewal. These were not tools of destruction, but symbols of change. At night, Zeus gathered his allies and spoke of Olympus. He painted visions of a home above the clouds, built on wisdom. His words inspired hope, and courage ignited in their hearts. Preparation was not just about weapons, but spirit and trust. Zeus knew true leaders inspire loyalty, not fear. He walked among his allies as brother and friend. In his presence, each felt stronger, braver, and ready to fight. The seeds of rebellion had been planted, loyalty forged in fire. The storm was gathering, and destiny itself seemed to pause. The gods prepared in silence, and the world held its breath. Soon Zeus and his allies would rise together, and when that moment came, the cosmos would change forever. The time for hiding had ended. The whispers of destiny had become a steady drumbeat in Zeus's heart. The world, heavy under Cronus's rule, began to stir with quiet anticipation. Every wave, every gust of wind carried the same message: change was coming. Zeus, no longer the hidden child, now stood as a leader ready to confront the past. His siblings, bound by blood and hope, gathered by his side in unity. Together, they carried the promise of balance, justice, and renewal. Cronus still sat upon his throne, vast and unyielding in power. Yet unease stirred within him, for prophecy haunted his reign. He had tried to prevent it, but fate always finds its way. The rebellion began quietly, in whispers carried across valleys and mountains. Zeus and his allies did not strike with force, they prepared in silence. They built strength, nurtured spirit, and chose their moments with care. Cronus was mighty, but Zeus knew his greatest weapon was fear. And fear was also his greatest weakness. To win, they needed unity, wisdom, and the will to stand firm. The rise began not with weapons, but with courage and resolve. Zeus's voice became thunder, rolling through hearts longing for freedom. He promised not vengeance, but renewal and shared power. His call resonated, shaking the old order at its roots. Nature itself seemed to respond to the growing storm. Skies darkened, seas surged, and the earth stirred restlessly. Cronus heard whispers of Zeus's rising from his heavy throne. At first he dismissed them. What could one young god do? But the whispers grew louder, echoing across the cosmos. For the first time, Cronus felt the chill of doubt. The day came when Zeus and his siblings revealed themselves. No longer hidden, no longer silent, they stood together in defiance. The prophecy had come alive before the eyes of the world. Cronus saw not fragile children, but gods blazing with purpose. Their presence declared the age of Titans was ending. Father and son faced one another, not in blades, but in will. Cronus clung to the past, while Zeus reached toward the future. The heavens rumbled with thunder, echoing Zeus's courage. The seas roared with Poseidon's might, shadows deepened with Hades' resolve. The earth stirred with Demeter's promise. The hearth glowed with Hestia's flame. Hera stood proud and unyielding, a symbol of endurance. Together, they were more than Cronus had ever imagined. He had underestimated the strength of unity and the power of hope. The rise had begun not with destruction, but with courage. It was the dawn of a struggle that would shape the cosmos. The Titans still stood, but the young gods no longer hid. For the first time, the throne of Olympus glimmered on the horizon. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but the first step was taken. The age of Cronus trembled, and the age of Zeus was about to unfold. The world held its breath. The silence before the storm weighed heavy, as if creation itself awaited its fate. The young gods had risen, and Cronus knew the moment had come. Thus began the Titanomachy, the great struggle of old against new. The Titans embodied the raw, ancient forces of the cosmos. They were the mountains' weight, the ocean's pull, the sun's blaze. Against them stood Zeus and his siblings, radiant with unity. Their power was smaller, yet their vision burned brighter. The skies became their battlefield, alive with storm and light. Zeus raised his hand, and thunder roared like destiny itself. Each bolt of lightning declared change, not destruction. Poseidon commanded the seas, waves rising in walls of might. The ocean surged with freedom, echoing the young god's calls. Hades spread shadows, weaving silence and patience into the fray. Demeter touched the earth, and life bloomed in defiance. Hestia's fire burned steady, a hearth of hope in chaos. Hera's spirit gave them endurance, the strength to never yield. The Titans struck with quakes, storms, and endless might. Their power was vast, but their hearts were divided. Zeus saw their weakness and pressed forward with unity. The battle raged across ages. Beyond mortal reckoning, mountains trembled, seas thundered, and skies blazed with fire. Through it all, the young gods carried one another. When one faltered, another rose to lend strength. Cronus faced Zeus, father against son, old against new. Cronus wielded time, heavy with the weight of ages. But Zeus met him with storms, fueled by vision and hope. Their clash shook the cosmos, echoing through eternity. It was not brute force but vision that turned the tide. Cronus fought to preserve, Zeus fought to create. The Titans, though mighty, began to falter at last. Unity and hope pressed against their scattered strength. The storm rose to a peak, thunder and waves colliding. Flame, earth, and shadow joined in one great crescendo. Then, as if the universe sighed, silence fell. The Titanomachy was ending, the old order breaking. From the struggle, a new dawn began to rise. Olympus was not yet built, but its throne was waiting. The age of Titans bowed to the promise of gods, and at the center stood Zeus, Stormbringer and Renewer. He was no tyrant, but the bearer of a new age. The storm of Titanomachy had reached its peak. The skies thundered, the seas surged, and the earth trembled beneath endless struggle. For ages, the world had borne witness to gods and titans in conflict. Now, at last, the storm began to break. Cronus, still towering, carried the heavy weight of time itself. But the strength he relied upon for eons was fading. The prophecy he had long feared stood before him in living form. Zeus, no longer a child in hiding, stood resolute, the face of destiny. Their clash echoed beyond the earth, shaking existence itself. Yet brute strength would not decide the end of this struggle. It was vision, unity, and the will to renew the world. Cronus unleashed his might, his power pressing without end. But cracks began to show, the first signs of surrender. Zeus did not stand alone, his siblings fought at his side. Poseidon roared with the seas, Hades balanced shadow with thought. Hera endured, Demeter renewed, and Hestia's fire gave hope. Together, Their harmony was unbreakable, their unity unstoppable. Cronus was mighty, but he was only one. The young gods were many, and they carried the weight of hope. The struggle was not one strike, but a tide too strong to resist. With each moment, Cronus faltered, his strength slipping away. The throne he guarded no longer answered his call. The weight of time became a burden he could not bear. At last, the prophecy was fulfilled. Cronus, the Titan king, yielded to the inevitable. Not in ruin, but in surrender, his age came to an end. The air grew lighter, the earth steadier, as if creation exhaled. The younger gods stood not as conquerors, but as guardians. They felt the weight of responsibility settle on their shoulders. Zeus looked upon Cronus with solemn understanding, not cruelty. He had sought renewal, not destruction. Cronus's reign was part of the world's story, now complete. From his fall, Olympus began to rise. Not in stone yet, but in vision and spirit. The stars themselves seemed brighter, welcoming a new dawn. Zeus stood at the center, stormbringer and king of the gods. His heart carried humility, knowing his rule meant stewardship. The fall of Cronus was not an end, but a beginning. The beginning of Olympus, of order, of hope. As the storm clouds parted, new light bathed the earth. The throne of Olympus awaited, and destiny was fulfilled. The storm of war had faded, and the world breathed in peace once more. The skies no longer roared, the seas calmed, and the mountains stood steady. Cronus and the Titans had passed, their chapter closed with finality. In their place stood the younger gods, ready to shape a new era. At the heart of them was Zeus, no longer a hidden child, but a true king. He had risen from prophecy, shadow, and struggle into his destiny. Zeus was not like Cronus, for he ruled with trust and vision. Where Cronus sought to consume, Zeus sought to build and renew. High above the earth stood Mount Olympus, gleaming in the heavens. Its peaks touched the clouds, a beacon of hope and harmony. Here the gods would gather, not in hiding, but in open unity. Poseidon claimed the seas, shaping tides with steady command. Hades embraced the underworld, balancing life's endless cycle. Hera became queen, guiding order with wisdom and resolve. Demeter nurtured the harvests, turning seasons with gentle care. Hestia kept the flame alive, warmth at the heart of every home. Zeus took the sky, stormbringer, guardian, and king of the gods. His throne was not domination, but stewardship for all creation. The world responded to their harmony with balance and renewal. Storms still came, but they brought growth, not ruin. The seas surged with life. The earth flourished under the Sunday. Humanity looked upward and felt awe, yet comfort, in their guardians. Zeus remembered unity, the bond that had carried them to triumph. His throne was shared, an inheritance of hope with his siblings. Thus began the reign of the Olympians, eternal in their home. From Olympus, they watched not as tyrants, but as stewards. Each god held purpose, each power bound by responsibility. And Zeus, storm in hand, ruled with strength and humility. This was not a tale of conquest, but of renewal and change. The fall of the Titans opened the way for something brighter. Olympus became eternal, linked forever to gods and mortals. Zeus, king of the gods, carried the vow of guardianship. The throne of Olympus was not only power, it was a promise to protect, to guide, to keep balance across the ages. The throne was filled, the prophecy complete, and dawn had come.